Welcome to Warehouse Automation Matters. I'm your host, Mary Hart, and I'm here today with Anthony Pendola, the Senior Manager of Distribution at Fleet Feet, a running specialty retailer, and John Santagate, the Senior Vice President of Robotics at Korber Supply Chain Software, to discuss the benefits of humans and robots working together. Anthony and John, thanks so much for joining me today. Can each of you start off by briefly introducing yourselves and describe your roles within your respective organizations? Anthony, I'll start with you, and then John, you can introduce yourself after Anthony does.
Thank you, Mary. Happy to be here with you today. So my name is Anthony Pendola. I am the Senior Manager of Distribution at Fleet Feet. Fleet Feet is a run specialty retailer headquartered in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area. We have over 180 stores across the country, and I manage operations in our distribution center in Durham, North Carolina.
Fabulous. Thank you. And John.
Right. Yes, and thank you for having me. So my name is John Santagate. I'm the Senior Vice President of Robotics at Korber Supply Chain Software. We are a supplier of end-to-end applications for warehouse management execution. So our organization helps our customers with warehouse management, labor management, transportation management, anything that ends in a MS in the warehouse software world. We're also the world's leading reseller and integrator of voice technologies and the world's leading reseller and integrator of mobile robotic technologies. So I've been with the business here coming up on 5 years now and have the pleasure of having joined the organization to start this business practice.
Fabulous. And can you tell me how your collaboration came about between Fleet Feet and Korber? John, let's go with you.
Yeah, I'll start there. Well, so Fleet Feet had reached out to Korber as a part of their effort to implement some technologies to improve warehouse operations overall. I'll let Anthony go through the scale of the project itself. It wasn't just one solution area. They reached out to us as a supplier of warehouse management technologies, and through the course of several discussions and conversations about what they were looking to accomplish, we identified that the warehouse management application that we provided, our Warehouse Edge WMS, was a great fit for their operation, but also that there might be an opportunity to leverage some autonomous mobile robotics in their facility as well. And so, as we're a supplier of both technologies, we worked in collaboration with Anthony and his team to go through the process of designing the application architecture as well as the robotic processes that we'd look for to put through into their operation. There was more to it. I think the great story to hear really comes from Anthony. So I'll let Anthony dig a little bit deeper there into how the collaboration really started.
Yeah, definitely. So as John alluded to, this was a multifaceted project. A couple of years ago, we made the decision that we needed to find a new ERP solution for our company. And in going down that road, we discovered that we needed a new warehouse management software program that would incorporate in with that ERP program. And so the company ultimately decided to go with NetSuite as our ERP solution. And our previous warehouse management system was not compatible with NetSuite. Our operation had grown considerably since we initially went live with that WMS. And so we were outgrowing that program as well. As that was happening, we were having separate discussions with other AMR companies as we were looking to potentially incorporate that into our operation, maybe down the road as we continue to grow and we had projections to grow. And so we had this project, the ERP solution for our finance team, the need for a new warehouse management system within our DC operations. And in discussions with Korber, as we were having these discussions with other AMR companies, we quickly realized Korber's relationship with Locus and realized that project to include AMRs in our operation that seemed out of reach and down the road was a lot closer than we thought. And so we had this discussion as we're going to go through all of these changes. Why not just do this all at once? And so we went live with a new ERP program, a new WMS, and AMRs all in the same day.
Fabulous. And Anthony, can you describe the initial steps that you took to integrate robots, specifically AMRs, into the warehouse operations at Fleet Feet?
For sure. So if you back up a couple of months prior to us going live with our new WMS and Locus Robotics in the warehouse, we also moved into a new distribution center um, and consolidated two other smaller distribution centers back into one larger distribution center. And so as we were making preparations to move into our new facility, obviously the way that we designed that facility, the way that we laid out our racking, our aisles, our repacking area, creating a space for induction, which was something we had not had prior to. Really, the Korber team and the Locust team helped us design that space just so that it was designed optimally for when we went live. Because when we initially reopened in the new warehouse, we still had to operate on our old system for a couple of months prior to go live. But really, we were able to hit the ground running once we went live.
Fabulous. And I know that you have the human associates working alongside the robots. How do you define the roles and responsibilities of the workers and the robots within the warehouse?
So currently, we're using Locus only to pick orders for our company-owned stores. So we have two different types of stores at Fleet Feet. We have corporate-owned stores and franchise locations. All of our corporate-owned stores are supported out of our distribution center with most of the product that they sell. There's an auto replenishment program that creates orders for these stores weekly. It looks at the store's model stock. It looks at what the store has on hand versus what we have on hand in the distribution center and places orders up to that model stock. Currently, those orders are running 5 times a week for our company-owned stores. And so our outbound team is primarily focused on picking those orders on Locus Robotics. We also do about close to 20% of all fleetfeet.com orders out of our distribution center. Currently, we are picking those orders by hand on Korber, but we're looking to implement Locus for e-com picking in the very near future. And there's also the capability to utilize Locus for put away function from our inbound team, which is we're currently not doing. So right now, Locus is primarily involved with our outbound pickers, but definitely opportunities to grow Locus's role within our DC operation.
Perfect. And how did the team respond to the introduction of robots? And what measures did you put in place to ensure a smooth transition from doing the hand picking for them to working with the robots?
There was a fair amount of skepticism on behalf of our associates prior to going live with Locus, and I think that's fair with any new process. Anytime that there is a major change within the operation, I think there was a fair amount of concern that maybe the 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 robots were going to come in and reduce the amount of positions on the team or kind of negate the role of the people that were already on the team. And really, what it has allowed us to do is, yes, we've been able to shrink the size of our picking team, the number of associates that are required to fulfill these orders on a daily and weekly basis. But we've just been able to reinvest those people into other areas of the operation. Things that we always knew were important, like focusing on inventory accuracy and having a fully built out and dedicated inventory team. We never quite had enough folks to achieve that because we always had this deadline of orders that we needed to meet. We've now been able to repurpose members of our team and invest in that team. And so prior to going live, we had a lot of discussions with our team about that very reality that we'll be able to focus on other things, but also really focused on how the use of the robots in the warehouse was going to make all the associates' jobs easier and safer. It didn't take more than maybe 3 weeks for everyone to really see that come to fruition. And so, our entire team loves working with the bots now, and they've really seen over the last 7 months at this point how it's made their jobs a lot easier.
That's wonderful. So what kind of feedback directly have you received from the employees about working with the robots? I know you said they love working with them. Is there any other specifics that you'd like to share?
Just, the overarching theme of the feedback we get is just how much easier it's made their jobs. People have shared that prior to the implementation of the bots, they would go home and they would be very tired from a full day at work, and now they go home and they don't feel as tired, and they have more time to do things with their families, and more energy to focus on hobbies and things like that.
I love that. So when you're training new associates or temporary associates, what have you, what kind of training do you have to do to adapt them to working alongside the robots? Is it a smooth process? Is it quick?
It's a very quick and smooth process. Prior to implementing Edge and Locus, if we were to bring a new picker in the building, we would had about a week-long process where they would be paired up with a trainer one-on-one for the better part of a week. Certainly initially for the first 3 days, one-on-one 100% of the time, and then maybe by day 4 and 5, maybe slightly less and less. The picking process was just a lot more involved, and it took more time to train someone. Now we can train a group of 2 to 3 pickers at a time. One trainer to 2 to 3 pickers, and in 30 to 45 minutes, they can be really thoroughly trained and ready to go and pick independently, or at least to the point where we feel confident that they know 95% of what they need to know after that time frame. And hey, if something happens that you're not quite sure of, just stop what you're doing and find one of us, and we can certainly help you out. But it's definitely made the training process just a lot quicker, a lot more efficient, overall much simpler.
That's fabulous. So how specifically has the collaboration between the humans and robots impacted your overall efficiency and productivity at Fleet?
So I mentioned earlier the auto replenishment program that we have for our company owned stores. We have 85 company owned stores, and prior to implementing the robots, we were doing one order per store per week.
Mhm.
Those orders would enter our system uh, throughout the day Sunday. Our team would start on them first thing Monday morning, and it would take us all the way through Friday and sometimes into Saturday to complete those orders. And so every store was getting one large order once a week. So you can imagine those orders ranged from 350 to 400 individual units, and that's a mix of footwear, socks, nutrition, different items, apparel, to as large as 3,500 units. And so if you're a store and you're getting one shipment a week, and it's 3,500, if you're one of our larger stores and it's 3,500 to 4,000 units, that translates to about 50 or more boxes that are being delivered at one point in time. It's very overwhelming from just a standpoint of the space to bring it in the building and store it. And it's very time consuming to receive it into inventory and make it, in stock to sell. Now we are doing orders to stores 5 times a week. So we've broken those orders up into smaller pieces, and they're getting more regular, more frequent shipments throughout the week. So from the space standpoint of just getting it in the door to the amount of time needed to receive it, drastically decreased. Also, if your model stock for a particular shoe, say for instance, is one because it's maybe a size that doesn't sell as frequently, if you sell that, then you have to wait for that program to run again to get restocked. Now they're getting restocked on those items more frequently. So it's just been an overall improvement from our ability to complete our work in the DC, but also for the benefit of the stores. Our units per hour when we were hand picking with a team of 20 to 25 pickers was around 85 units an hour. Now with 22 bots and 5 pickers, we're picking 180 units an hour. So I mean, there's just been throughput and efficiency improvements all across the board.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Let's shift gears and take a look at the future outlook or talk about things that you might have seen. John, How do you envision the evolution of robot-human collaboration in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mary. I think, first of all, going back to a lot of what Anthony said, right? It's the foundation is set for human and automation collaboration. If we look backwards, if you go back to, let's say, 2016, right, 8 years ago, mobile robots weren't even something that was being discussed in the markets with very few exceptions. The technology didn't necessarily exist; it wasn't mature. You fast forward to 2019, and you start to see maybe some early adopters that had started to do pilots. Now they're starting to make their first wave of orders. So 6 years later now, I'd still say we're maybe at the two outs in the bottom of the first inning in terms of the market opportunity for mobile robotics specifically. And that's one segment. As Anthony indicated, the robots are making businesses more efficient. They're improving the working conditions for the people that are working in these businesses, and they're allowing people to gain new skills. So this technology isn't just transformative to a warehouse operation. It's transformative to an industry. It's transformative to the jobs landscape, right? Because if again, you look back at the emergence of the internet, there was no such thing as an app developer 15, 20 years ago. And now that's a massive job segment. Now we're seeing, robotic design specialists, folks that are building the robots. There's education programs, pardon me, all the way through to elementary schools. I mean, my daughter's school has a robotics program, and she's been doing it since she was in third grade. It's an after-school program, and they build these Lego robots, but then they're learning how to code them, and so we're training these new skill sets. So broadly speaking, the market is rather early. We're seeing great growth. Everybody now has heard what an autonomous mobile robot or AMR is, and we're seeing the impact on the overall market. If we look forward, right, we can again look at the technologies that are starting to emerge, right? You're seeing more and more biped robots or humanoid robots that are, making their way out. There's massive investment being spent on these biped humanoid robots. And now, is that the answer to the growth of robotics in the market? Maybe, maybe not. But the technology exists that are creating these tools that can do more things that historically were human required. And that said, there's still things that humans can do that robots just won't be able to do for any time soon. The fact that any one of the three of us can pick up a television, a baseball hat, a coffee cup, and a cell phone without thinking about it. We instinctively know how to do it. That's how human beings work. Robots don't work that way. They're trained and they're coded to do certain things. What we're seeing now is the emergence or growth of robotic technology from fixed application to more flexible application, right? Automation historically, especially in the warehouse, right? In manufacturing environments, it's still even a bit different. But in the warehouse, it had been high velocity conveyors, and you build to your 5 or 10 year vision. You underutilize that asset until you hit the capacity it was designed for. And at that point, now it's, oh no, we've outgrown it. Now we need a new building or to rip this automation out. So it was somewhat constrained in that approach. And what we're seeing with the more flexible automation is you can scale it, right? I mean, companies like Fleet Feet, with the help of Locus Robotics, are able to say, here's our baseline fleet of X number of robots. But we've got a peak, and our peak lasts about 6 weeks. Historically, we'd have to bring in an army of temporary labor that's very expensive and would take extra time, 2, 3 weeks ahead of time to skill up. Now we can deploy additional robot capacity. You're still bringing people into the process, but you can bring fewer people in and build up, as Anthony said, skill up in other areas of the business where it's more important. So I think the future of robotic and human collaboration is just that, is continuing to look at where we can improve the lives of people through the use of this technology in ways that allow human beings to do what we're best at. And that's being creative, that's thinking, that's responding, that's using our hands and being dexterous, as opposed to doing the repetitive, dull, painful tasks that we're now able to rely on robots to do.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. So, for both of you, and I'll start with Anthony first, what lessons have you learned from implementing this collaboration that you would like to share with other companies considering a similar path?
Sure. Um, when we started having the discussions about implementing robots into the operation, a lot of the discussions that we would have with different vendors, I would see how their program worked or their platform worked, and then with the knowledge of how our operation worked, it just seemed like I don't think this is a solution for the way that we operate. We do a lot of direct to consumer business, but we also do the larger part of our operation is our B2B business. And so it seemed like it just was something that was out of reach for us. When we had, more in-depth conversations with Korber and with Locus, I was able to see how we could customize the solution to fit the way that we need to operate. And so something that seemed like a great idea but not quite right for us, quickly realized that, like, no, this is something that's totally viable for us and something that can really make a big difference. And honestly, I'm certainly glad that we've implemented it into our operation now. But knowing, the many years that we did not have it, I wish it was something that we had done sooner.
Thank you. And John, how about you?
Yeah, so there's a ton of lessons learned, right? I've been involved in, you know, multiple dozens of these deployment projects in different form factors. We've done, I think I've got 24 Locus Robotics deployments just with that vendor partner, including Fleet Feet. So there is a lot of lessons learned. One of the biggest ones I think is before the robots are even in place is, there's a lot of information out there. And part of the reason that I joined Korber in the way that I did was prior to this, I was an industry analyst. So I was writing research reports, and the topic of a lot of my research, I focused it on robotic technology for the warehouse and started that research in 2015. And so going back to that timeline I was talking about, there was a lot of folks that you could see a solution at a big trade show, a Modex or a ProMat, and do a pilot, and that pilot worked. Great, that's great. We're going to deploy this technology, and then 6 months later was, wait, I just learned about this other technology that actually solves my problem 5 times better than what we just invested in. And so, part of what I'm very excited to be able to do now is help companies sort of narrow down the field of vision to what's best fit for their application through a lot of iterations, a lot of at bats, if you will. So I think first and foremost is to really look holistically. There's a lot of technologies out there. The biggest lesson learned, Anthony, you've heard me say this, right? Just because you can automate something doesn't always mean that you should, right? You can automate anything you want in the warehouse. There's opportunity to do it all. But does it make sense to do it? Is there an economic value? Is there an operational value? Does it make the business better versus doing something cooler, right? Cooler isn't always better. Certainly, robotic and automation technology checks that box. But when we're making these decisions, it really needs to be done with an eye towards, improving the operation in a way that makes it better for the business and better for the people that are involved in the business. And I think that's a really important piece there. And then the last one Anthony touched on as well earlier is, involve your people early on, right? Socialize what's going on and the impact that it's going to have. Have a message so that you alleviate the concerns of the associates earlier, because we've seen it time and again, just as Anthony mentioned, when you deploy this technology, right? You've got other needs in the business. You can redeploy your people into these other areas and actually have positive impact upstream and downstream while improving the productivity by doing more with less in a small part of that business. So, change management is critical, and the earlier you can have that discussion with your associates and get that knowledge sharing out, I think the better.
Fabulous. Thank you. And we'll go to John still. What's the one key takeaway you would like our listeners to remember about humans and robots working together in a warehouse setting?
Yeah, there's the one key thing would really be that they're not as challenging, expensive, and complex as most people think, right? The technology has evolved in a way to really be able to implement into businesses of all sizes, right? One of the common misconceptions is robotic technologies for the big guys, right? And that's not the case anymore, right? The modern ecosystem of robotic solutions is really allowing organizations of all sizes to take advantage and be competitive in the market through the application of this sort of technology.
Wonderful. And Anthony, what one key takeaway would you like listeners to walk away from?
Change is hard, change is scary, change is difficult, but most of the times it's worth it, to get to the other side and see the improvements that you can make. And so, like as I said earlier, for a long time, I thought like this solution was just out of reach for us, or maybe not perfect. But now being on the other side of it's totally worth it.
Wonderful. We've reached the end of the podcast for today. Thank you again, Anthony and John, for joining me today on Warehouse Automation Matters. It was a fantastic discussion. And thanks as always to our listeners. We're here to help you move what matters in your warehouse.